The launch vehicle performance was flawless. We had a slight amount of vibration during the early phases of the flight until we became supersonic, and the ride was extremely smooth from that time on. At staging, time when we separate from the first stage of the launch vehicle and ignite the second stage, we encountered a small fireball. This was reported for the first time in Gemini VI, and it is apparently a function of the individual characteristics of the timing of the staging sequence. This amounts to flying through a little bit of the exhaust from your own second stage rocket engine ignition. At this time, we felt that we had some deposit on the window as a result of this small fireball.
2, 1. Ignition. Liftoff. Roger, Clark, coming in.
Yes, that's running. We got a roll program.
Roger, roll. Good liftoff, 8.
It's looking good. Our roll is in. We have a pitch program.
Roger, pitch program. Mark, 50 seconds. You're looking good, 8.
Cabin pressure is 5.7.
Have the cabin. Mark, 1 plus 40. You're looking good, 8.
Okay, mode 2. DCS is in.
Roger, DCS.
Stage 2 tanks look good.
we prepared to make this transfer based on a number of cues given by the ground and also on board the spacecraft. And I might mention before I get into it that this particular maneuver is almost exactly like the one we'll use in lunar orbit to accomplish the rendezvous from the lunar surface to the command module in lunar orbit. So in fact, we're gathering data each time we fly now on a system which we hope to use in a couple of years to accomplish the lunar orbital rendezvous.
So my understanding that these films are being shown approximately in the actual time sequence. They were taken at some at 6 frames per second and some at 1 frame per second, but they've been stepped to look very much like the view we saw out the window, the right time sequence. It's very easy to maneuver around the vicinity of another spacecraft. As reported in '76, we found the reports of the previous flight to be quite accurate. It's indeed easier than we had expected it to be. This was reassuring because later parts of our flight plan included a number of such activities. We did not take too many pictures. We were attempting to conserve film since we had so many later activities to cover with limited amount. The position of the sun, of course, is not the best in all these. Our activities were constrained by other things that we were attempting to do. In that case, we were aligning the platform, our spacecraft inertial platform was being aligned during that time period. Again, for reasons of collecting data, the docking was performed over the Rosenot Victory off the coast of South America, and so that data could be received on the ground during the time of contact. This, however, was just at sunset, and you can observe here that the sun is very low off on the right side, right horizon, and illuminating the right side of the Agena, while the left side and docking cone are in darkness. It's a very unusual phenomenon. Out my window, the world was at night, and Dave's window view was one of daytime. Maneuvering the spacecraft in the close vicinity of the docking cone is not at all difficult. We stopped at approximately 2 feet out from the docking cone and waited until the Capcom on the RKV told us that he had good telemetry, and which took about 2 minutes, and then docked at a closing velocity of approximately 3/4 of a foot per second, approximately 9 inches per second, plus or minus 3. It was our intention to use about 1 foot per second for the docking contact velocity. This was during the time period when we're waiting for contact with the tracking ship. As soon as we were informed that he had data, we proceeded with the docking exercise. Immediately after docking, it was our intention to yaw the Agena using the Agena control system and to 90 degrees from its present heading. The Agena is oriented perpendicular to the plane of the orbit at this point for lighting considerations.
Initially, you're too far out to really see the detail of the Agena, but as you approach the Agena, it becomes a very distinguishable cylindrical object, and I think, from my impression, it would be very similar to joining two aircraft together, and I think maybe Neil could tell you better because he did it, but in watching him, it looked to me like he was just making another join up, and it was real smooth and real steady. He might describe it better.
In that particular area, as well as a number of other areas in this flight, I was particularly struck by the similarities between experience in the spacecraft and experience in aircraft. It really made us feel at home and feel confident and feel that our aircraft training was indeed a great benefit to us.
It's a very similar sensation when you get up there. You actually feel like you're flying. When he perform a maneuver with the maneuvering thrusters, well, I felt just like you'd kick the afterburner in on an aircraft, and the sensations are very similar.
Ben?
From our point of view, it worked even better than it was supposed to. The actual contact was very smooth. The target docking adapter adapted itself very well to the attitude of the spacecraft. The latches engaged immediately. The cone withdrew to its rigid position. We got the light as expected, the rigid light, and we observed no Agena motions as a result of the contact. Mike, comment on that?
Well, I'd like to say that we are sure what went wrong in Gemini VIII. It was a short to ground that caused power to go to one of the thrusters. And this, as Neil has said, is a very remote occurrence. It has been described here. Couldn't have happened at a worse or more confusing time in this mission. But it's not something that, it's a very unlikely thing to happen. And one of the things that made it difficult at this time was the fact that they had just joined with the Agena. They had thought they had power off of their system, and they were nowhere near a ground station. Now, if any of these three things hadn't have happened, they could have turned this thing off and really continued on with their flight. It was three very unlikely things all occurring at once, which made this as serious an occurrence as it was. And it's taken some good detective work, both in flight by them and then later by all the teams going over what happened from the recorded data to sleuth out what could have happened to have made this thruster go on. We think we've found it. And I would say there are things that we're doing, as Neil has said, to make this less apt to occur, or this kind of thing less apt to occur, but we expect to be able to reach a state where we're confident of going EVA on the next Gemini mission.
I have a question for Neil Armstrong that's fraught with insignificance. As I understand it, you've received a raise, courtesy of the President, that amounts to about $5.94 a week after taxes, and I'm wondering what you're going to do with the money.
It doesn't matter.
Your question, I'm sure, is much better than my answer, Bill. take a very long time here when we're stretched out. You can see, however, that we were quite stable. The two vehicles in close proximity were quite stable. We're getting further and further into darkness, but we didn't have time to readjust the cameras, so these pictures are considerably dimmer than we would like to have. Little green lights above are the status display panel, which tells us about the condition of the Agena. And the rose-colored light is reflection from lights inside the cone to help us align the spacecraft for docking. Actually, you're looking at the inside of the docking cone there in the orange colored area. There's docking contact, essentially at night. As you can see out my window, it was quite dark. We saw no electrical discharge or sparks at the time of contact as the spacecraft touched the whisker. Then the problem again uncovered itself, and the rates began to increase to the point where we felt the structural integrity of the combination, since they were joined only at 3 points at the nose, was in jeopardy. And it was felt that some more drastic measures would have to be taken. When we mutually agreed to undock, used the undocking switch and backed away as quickly as possible. It was quite evident upon detaching the two spacecraft there was indeed a problem in the spacecraft control system, and for approximately 3 minutes we attempted to isolate that problem. The hand controller was inoperative for a period of time during this 3-minute period, and prompted a remark which was later received on the ground that we apparently had a hand controller that was either stuck open or not operating correctly. The rates at this time were accelerating to quite high values, and we felt that some more drastic steps would need to be taken. We activated our reentry control system, which is a completely separate rocket thruster and fuel system, and turned the normal orbit attitude system completely off by closing all circuit breakers, closing all valves, and we're successful in at that time observing that we did have control and could reduce the rates to an acceptable value.